What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
So welcome to our show. It's Thursday, October 5th, 2017. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. So let's get right on into it. It's kind of interesting to see this sort of, if you will, combat developing between the Las Vegas police and the FBI, because now even the Las Vegas police are saying there had to be multiple parties in that shooting from the Mandalay Bay into that concert. It was just impossible for this one guy to do it. And so you've got the chief of police out there saying, yeah, there had to be other parties. And you've got the FBI on this side saying, no, there was nobody else. It was a crazed lone wolf. There's nobody else. You know, getting out the watch and trying to hypnotize him or just, you know, beating him up or something like that. But it's very obvious, you know, the FBI has been assigned a story to sell, and they're getting very nervous. Even the police department aren't buying it. Even Trey Gowdy isn't buying it. And it's almost a comedy to watch how the FBI is trying to just keep the narrative that it's just this one 64-year-old angry white male Christian that did all of this, especially in the face of the recordings that clearly show two different weapons firing at the same time. So as government cover-ups and staged psyops go, this one's already fallen apart. And it's very obvious that what happens in Las Vegas doesn't stay in Las Vegas anymore. Apparently, also according to the Las Vegas sheriff, Lombardo, he's saying at this point the assumption is he had help. And now they're looking at a mystery woman, not his girlfriend that he was seen with just before the shooting took place. They're trying to locate her. It's sort of like that girl in the polka dot dress that was seen with Sirhan just before Robert Kennedy was shot, and they put out an APB on her, and then the police turned around and basically browbeat anybody who'd seen the girl in the polka dot dress and said, no, there was no girl in the polka dot dress, there was just Sirhan. So this is already reeking of cover-up and from top to bottom here. Now, at this point, the FBI is saying there's no evidence at this point to say it was an act of domestic terrorism. I'm sure those people down there on the receiving end of the bullets were feeling very terrified, but I'm wondering what they're calling it. If it's not an act of domestic terrorism, just your everyday, vanilla, run-of-the-mill mass killing. It's amazing here. Now, over at Breitbart, they're reporting on how CNN published a column yesterday, written by Naz Modan, who is the editor of Muslim Girl magazine, and basically came on out and said, well, Las Vegas happened because America is silently accepting the rage of white men. And, you know, if there had been some ethnic minority up there in the Mandalay Bay, the people would be much more upset and angry. Like I said, everybody grabs these things and tries to push their particular agenda with it, which right now, along with gun control, seems to be bashing white Christian males. But the reality is, the reason people aren't feeling quite so angry about Las Vegas is they're doubting the official story. And by the way, I got a phone call from somebody I know who was in Las Vegas when this all went down. And this friend has been talking to everybody around there and doing a little on-the-ground legwork, digging on in. And the first piece of information, again, everybody who was actually at that concert venue is saying, yeah, shots were coming from multiple directions. Second piece of interesting information about the Mandalay Bay itself, there are security cameras in the hallways. My friend is saying Mandalay Bay is one of the most secure hotel casinos in Las Vegas, which is a town that's really paranoid about crime and so forth. So there were cameras. Where are the videos showing this guy bringing all the stuff into the room all by himself here? And finally, apparently as part of their security, the Mandalay Bay has a system where if a window breaks, it sounds an alarm. So for our shooters to take those windows out or break them or shoot them out, it would have triggered immediately a security alert down in security. So something weird was going on there the whole time. Now, of course, everybody is out there saying, we must have more gun laws. You don't need guns. You don't need guns at all. Well, look at what's going on in Catalonia. That shows you the problem with being disarmed civilians. Because the Catalonians are not allowed to have guns. And the Spanish police just came on in and literally stomped on them, stole the ballot boxes, and tried to prevent the free expression of a democratic move for independence. And the Catalonians could not fight back. All they could do is just sit there and bleed. And that's why the people have to have guns. That's why the Founding Fathers gave us the Second Amendment. So that when government gets too big for its britches, we can hold them back. So anybody who says the American people don't need to be armed, you just look at what's going on over in Catalonia. And that'll tell you precisely why we need to be armed. We're going to do shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And we're going to take a phone call from Dustin in New Jersey.
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Doing fine.
Mike, the United States of America, I want to talk about the stuff in Las Vegas, but Mike, the United States of America is like the EU. It's a joining of all the states and controlling them through this little oligarchy, and they don't want any independent thought. You can see that by the Catalonians' independence. They don't want anybody to step outside of their power structure.
Of
their
course,
oligarchy.
Of course, they just want to hang on to the power. They want to hang on to the people and go on taxing them and just having all kinds of fun with that money. And the globalists are trying to stop all of these independence referendums. And there's a bunch of them out there getting ready to happen because we're going in the wrong way. We're supposed to be welding all these places together into one giant human ranch where we can harvest at will for as much wealth and power as we want while we sit on the golden throne of planet Earth.
But isn't the joke the same people, the same exact, a minute later they'll say we're trying to bring democracy around the world while they're crushing the so-called democracy a minute before.
Oh, well, look what happened in this country last year. I mean, the United States government justifies their military interventions around the world by saying, we're bringing these people democracy. And then we find out our elections are just rigged, 17 different ways left to right. That's not democracy. That's an illusion of democracy. And maybe that's what we're bringing to these other countries because certainly it seems like the quality of life in all these countries the U.S. intervenes in goes way, way down following the intervention.
Bombocracy, Mike. Hillary Clinton, the Russians tried to interfere in our democracy. Her and Donna Brazil stole it from Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
This is the kind of mentality these people got. They're garbage, Mike. Mike, they're garbage. They should be getting rid of. I'm sorry to say they got to get rid of, but they got to get rid of because, Mike, they're going to get rid of us. If you see that the shooting in Las Vegas, that was aimed at supporter of country music people. It was aimed at a specific group, Mike. What people don't. There's going to be more, Mike, because these people.
There already has been. There's already has been. There was a shooting in Arizona. Remember yesterday on the radio show I said I think we're going to start seeing more and more of these mass shootings until the liberals get their gun ban. This is just the beginning of a campaign.
It is the beginning, Mike. And hey, Mike, did you see? I don't know if you watched anything with the Saudi Arabians landing in Moscow and doing the deals with the Russian government with nuclear having some nuclear reactors built.
Yes.
In Saudi Arabia and a lot of business deals with gas and oil. Mike, I'd say not even 10 years and less, the petrodollar's dead. It's already dying and it's dead. It's over here. And it's going to get worse. Mike, I keep saying this. It's going to get worse. I don't think it's ever going to get better, Mike.
Well, certainly not for this country. I mean, Maduro's already out there saying global oil trade ought to be in ruble and yuan right now. And, of course, that's an invitation to suffer a strange and suspicious death. But he's certainly right from an economic point of view. Right now, the U.S. dollar is very fragile. It's very unstable. They're trying as hard as they can to hide all the instant money creation coming out of the Federal Reserve. But at some point, it's going to appear. And we're already seeing, the effects of inflation. They won't admit that we're seeing inflation in this country, but we can see it with our own eyes at the store. I mean, Claire and I went shopping yesterday, and it was just a stunner how much food prices have gone up just in the last week.
Oh yeah, Mike, it sucks. We can't do really anything about it though. We can do partially, like you are trying to tell people what's going on, but it just sucks. You can't get out there some people I'm going to strangle just to wake them up. It seems like you're stuck in behind like a thick glass wall. You can bang on it and warn people, but you can't really reach out. You know what I mean? Like it's like we're in like a downward spiral down a toilet, Mike. It's just so obvious now, Mike.
Well, I don't agree with you. While I will not advocate for it, I'm getting a strong sense that there is a civil war coming to this country, and they may even be trying to start it on November 4th, a communist revolution. But unfortunately, as much as I would like to see this government simply collapse the way the Soviet Union did, the other reality is that we may reach a point where so many Americans are angry and desperate for change, nobody's going to be able to hold them back, not even me. And that's a reality that we have to take into consideration.
Mike, I'm a Democrat. I voted for Trump. I'm not really a Democrat, though, but I lean partially for, like, some type of, like, social security type of, like, kind of partially, but, like, if these people mess with me because I hate what they stand for, I'm going to kick them in the head till they're bloody on the ground, because, like, I'm to that point, Mike.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I'm sorry, but I am.
So are a lot of people. I'm hearing it. I'm getting emails from everybody saying that I'm an idiot for not calling for a revolution. But I'm trying to be practical here. If there's one thing the federal government really does well, it's kill people. And I don't want to see that here in the streets of America, because the wrong people are going to get killed and crippled in such an exercise. But again, it may be coming, and I can't stop it.
Yeah, but what they give, they can get back too, Mike. Thanks a lot, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot, Dustin. I definitely understand your anger, and I'm just seeing it all over the country right now. Let's go to Clinton, Las Vegas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Clint, are you there? Okay, I guess we lost Clint.
Yeah.
Oh,
you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now.
You hear me?
I hear you now.
Okay. Have you seen any surveillance camera released yet?
No.
From the Vegas? Okay.
And now they're saying that the cameras that Paddock supposedly put up in the hallway weren't recording, so there's no video available from them. Convenient explanation.
Well, we don't care about his cameras.
Sure we do.
I mean, yeah. It'd be nice. Well, sure, but okay. And I was just thinking back about all the other cases. Didn't they hold back surveillance video from a number of cameras from the collapse of the World Trade Center? They couldn't hold them all back, obviously, but I believe they suppressed a number of them under grounds of national security. Got Oklahoma City and all those cameras that were held back. And then,
and they seized all the videos that showed the Pentagon on 9/11. They only allowed out this one set of very blurry photos to keep that pointless debate about was there a plane or not going, and anything that would have clearly shown what happened at that wall has never been released. It's still classified.
I think they counted up to 89 just on the exterior building alone.
Yes.
And not only that, another point I want to bring up was the football player that his girlfriend, Ray Rice, I think his name was.
Yeah.
They released that within a few hours, and that's all we got to see for the whole next week on TV.
Yeah.
And so this idea that they got no cameras, no, we would have seen snippets by now if if they would have fit the official story. I highly question that he hauled one gun up to that room at all.
I think he was just incidental, like all those weapons dumped on the chairs, or like the handful of brass that was let go on the room. He's just part of the set dressing, and that's
like Timothy McVeigh was.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. But again, like I said earlier before we went to air, I had a friend who was actually in Las Vegas when all of this stuff went down, and this friend went over to the Mandalay Bay and did a walk around and verified there are security cameras in the hallways. So there should be video.
Yeah, from the time he enters the building, even before then, when he goes from the parking lot. Okay, I can verify this. I've been to Mandalay Bay many times. From the time he enters the parking lot till all through the lobby hallway, into the elevators, down the hallway to his room, he would have been in constant video surveillance.
Yes.
Under multiple dozens and dozens of cameras.
Yeah.
And they have to preserve these because if there's a robbery, they would want to go back and look at people, from the short period of time frame, people of interest, for the crime.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, of course they would catalog them. I got 100 movies on one thumb drive, so that story's ridiculous too. But I think one of the things Dustin brought up, I think we are kind of in a civil war inside our government right now, and that's why the Vegas police are not getting along with the FBI because the FBI is trying to push a story, and Metro's not going along with it. We'll see who the good guys are. But one of the things about the Pentagon, the FBI confiscated all those videos on 9/11.
Yes.
And the FBI has hung on to them. Who was the director of the FBI when all this was going on?
Let's see. Boy, that's reaching back a ways. Robert Mueller. Would make sense.
Robert Mueller.
Would make sense. All right, well, listen, Clint.
He was appointed director of the FBI a week before 9/11, I believe.
Yeah.
I'll let you go with that.
Just like the head of the FBI was changed on the very day Vince Foster was murdered. All right, let's see.
Yep.
We got a lot of people calling into the show here. Thank you, Clint. We're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to James in Atlanta. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, is there any video that shows the window actually being broken?
No, not at this time.
Well,
I mean, for one thing, it was dark when the incident went down, and the photos that we've all seen were taken the next morning after the sun came up.
Okay, my point was if they reenacted the crime, if they had a time-lapse video of the windows being broken, then they could see how long does it take to walk to the end of that big suite and knock out the other windows. And if it wasn't possible, that would mean that two people actually had to break them out.
Well, absolutely, because those two windows are not in the same suite. The big suite wraps around the end of the hotel at the end of that triple arm, if you will. To get to where the other window was out, you literally have to leave the suite and go next door, open that door with a key card, and go on in. It's not a straight line, and there's no real reason for a single shooter to have two different windows open. So that right there tells us there was at least one other shooter. And now we've got the chief of police of Las Vegas and the sheriff of Las Vegas are out there saying, yeah, there had to be more than one, and the FBI is sweating bullets. Okay.
The other room doesn't have adjoining.
No, it doesn't. We have to take a break now, and we'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome to our show, and we're going to go right back to the telephones here to, I think it's Jamie in Charlotte. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike?
Yes, you're on the air. You're on the air.
Oh, well, good. Yes, good afternoon, or morning where you are.
Okay, apparently your name is actually James.
That's correct.
Okay, good.
No, I just thought I'd let you know that YouTube has really been doing some house cleaning. I've come across about half a dozen videos so far that I had viewed that at least purported to have some evidence of multiple shooters at the Mandalay Bay Hotel, and they've all been removed. I'm sure there are probably quite a few others that I haven't come across yet. I was wanting to check also, have you heard about gunfire at least two other hotels during the shooting, the Bellagio and the Tropicana?
I've heard about reports of possible gunfire at 3 different hotels after the Mandalay Bay, and they went on lockdown and people were concerned, but none of these check out in terms of anybody finding any actual bullet holes. So it may have been somebody just set off some firecrackers and a cruel joke. Could have been cars backfiring. But again, somebody may have just gone down there with some firecrackers and said, everybody's on edge, let's have some fun. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. The town can get very, very weird, as you know.
Yeah. Been trying to follow it up to see if it was actual gunfire. I haven't been able to verify it either.
No, I haven't either. Somebody just heard a loud noise, and because what was happening at the Mandalay Bay and the Route 91 concert was already all over the news. Everybody knew it was going on, and so they're all on edge and a loud noise, and everybody panics and thinks there's another shooter out there.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was it. I was just wanting to check with you.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here and switch over to Frank in North Carolina. Aloha, Frank. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I was tuning in to get the latest breaking news on the Vegas shooting. And is that caller James from Charlotte, North Carolina?
Yeah, it's James from Charlotte, North Carolina. There was a typo on the screen.
Oh, okay. Wow, I didn't know there was anyone else awake in Charlotte. With these sensors that give off the alarm when the hotel windows are broken in suites, if they're going to go through all the trouble to do that, wouldn't they have probably also have it set up to where there's a readout to which window it is? So they can locate it?
It absolutely does. It's down. It's down with like all the smoke detectors and the fire alarms and everything. If a window breaks, it says which specific window it is.
So that would actually expedite the matter of locating a probable room where the shooting is coming from.
Absolutely.
Hey, Mike, I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask you a question though, just for a moment, and I'll take it off air. The reply. Now, you think the best option is let's just wait for a collapse, and I kind of agree with you, but then the question arises: okay, well, who really is going to be in charge after the collapse? I mean, who's going to take over and start from scratch from what's left over? I mean, isn't it just basically going to be a bunch of criminals all over again?
Well, the model I like to use for this are the Russian republics. When the Soviet Union collapsed, all those corrupt people, for the most part, left. They even left the country. The oligarchs were kicked on out, and Putin formed a new government with young blood that was from kind of outside that old system, which is something that Trump should have done last January and failed to do. And it's working a lot better. Now, there's always going to be corruption in every government. It's unavoidable. Politics and corruption go hand in glove, but it's a question about how much corruption there is. There's a tolerable level, and then there's an intolerable level. We're at the intolerable level. Anyway, Frank, we're going to have to let you go and take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones here to Dan in Washington State. Aloha, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thanks for taking the call. I just had a question about Catalonia.
Yes.
Is it a good or bad thing? I've had a hard time finding information on it, but my friend was telling me that basically it was kind of the George Soros Antifa crowd that was actually supporting the Catalonian separation, and So do you know how they stand on, like, immigration, or if they're for the EU? Or, you know, it could be globalists trying to just hurt Spain and divide it, you know, so the EU would have more power.
Well, certainly the EU is going the other direction. They don't want Catalonia to break free. In fact, they're starting to issue threats about that. The globalists want everything glued together. And they don't need to worry about weakening Spain compared to Brussels, because Spain is one of the few EU member nations that really hasn't been standing up to Brussels. They've just sort of been going along with things.
Okay, yeah, because like the Scottish separation, I was just thinking, what's the point? Because some of those people were more globalist than, you know, the Brexit people, so it seemed kind of like a scheme that just kind of hurt these nation states to where they'd still be part of the EU and just, like, say, destroy England, you know, or Great Britain and break it all up so that each little part can stand up to the EU, but it's hard to find information on it. I understand the financial, as far as Catalonia being a richer area,
yes,
and not wanting to support it.
Well, that's why Franco grabbed it.
Right.
All right, well, we're going to...
I studied a little of the history. It goes way back, you know, to the King Isabella. It's kind of been an ongoing thing for like 1,000 years.
Yeah, they were used to be their own country. They've got their own culture, their own language. And like I said, I have a friend who's from Catalonia, and we've been trading emails about what's going on. Anyway, I need to let you go. This is a very noisy phone line, and so we're going to let you go and get back here to some of the news here. Getting on back to the gun control debate, which is being pushed by the liberals here right now. And they're out there on the media saying that America leads the world in per capita ownership of guns, and that's why the United States is the murder capital of the world. Well, they're only half right. Yes, it is true, the U.S. has by far the highest per capita gun ownership in the world. For every 100 Americans, there are 90 guns. But the United States is not the murder capital of planet Earth. In fact, probably because of all those guns out there, the United States ranks 111th place in per capita murder rate. And again, look at the examples we're seeing in cities like Chicago that have very strict gun laws. The more guns are restricted, the higher the murder rate. And that also is true around the world. You go into those nations that are at the top of that list for murder rates, and you will find they all ban guns from the civilian population. So only the criminals have the guns and feel that they can use them with impunity. Now, as I mentioned to that caller earlier, there's been a shooting in Casa Grande, Arizona. 4 people are dead. Interestingly enough, law enforcement is saying there is no active shooter. They have a person of interest in custody. No motive is known at this time. And I think this is the final push by the liberals to overturn the Second Amendment. And we're going to see more and more of these until finally everybody says, oh, save us from the evil white raging males with guns out there. Meanwhile, Julian Assange is out there commenting, saying almost all terror plots are created by the FBI as part of its business model. And again, you need to go back and look at all the hoaxes that have been played before, all the way back to COINTELPRO in the 1960s here. Now, a lot of people are very concerned about all this talk from Antifa, who, by the way, somebody leaked out George Soros' tax records. He gave them something like $1,400,000 to Antifa. But they're going around right now saying that, you know, there's going to be a big event on November 4th. They're actually shutting down highways and freeways and streets, and they're getting into ruckus and they're getting arrested. But everybody's saying, what's going on? Well, again, if they're anti-fascist, it means they're pro-communist, because communism and fascism are opposite ends of the economic policy spectrum. And so we're seeing articles like this one over at shtfplan.com saying what Antifa is planning for November 4th is an attempt to spark a communist revolution. And apparently they have a draft of a new constitution. They want to replace the constitution we have, and it's called the Constitution for the New Socialist Republic in North America. So they're out there, and who knows what's going to go on there. Hillary Clinton is still out there on her book tour. I understand she's not quite come up to 500,000 books sold yet. They're already heavily discounted at the local bookstores around here. And apparently it must be very frustrating for her because she's being protested by Trump supporters and Bernie Sanders supporters. They're double teaming her about how she and Donna Brazile stole that nomination away from Bernie Sanders and how Hillary tried to steal the election from Donald Trump. And again, it's amazing to see the entire government and the corporate media still out there. Well, Russia did this and Russia did that. We don't have any proof, but we just know it. Miss Cleo looked into her crystal ball and told us Russia did all these horrible things. Well, what about what Hillary did? That the previous head of the FBI said she committed these Title 18 violations, felonies. Oh, well, she didn't mean to do wrong, so we can't go after her. We'll wake up with a horse's head in our bed for heck out loud. Well, actually, half of them will. The other half will get the other end of the horse in their bed. That way you get more use out of the horse. We're going to go to the phones here. Yvonne in New York, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, yes, Mike. Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine.
Oh, okay, great. I just wanted to say about the shooter that I think he really, the profile of the shooter, everybody's saying, does he seem like a psychopath, whatnot? I think like
okay, can you talk a little closer to the microphone because your phone line is breaking up here.
Can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Yeah,
yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think he fits the profile of a patsy perfectly because if he was gambling all the time, that's an addiction, you know, and people that gamble, whether they're very, very rich or very, very poor, they still get a rush off of making quick money. And even if he lost a little bit of money, let's say it was $50,000, that's still, you can get depressed. You can literally get depressed. You can get depressed just from losing $5. So the guy is like the perfect caricature of a patsy, where you would think that, you know, somebody could walk up to him and say, okay, you owe us $100,000, just do us a favor. And the way that they said those guns were laid out on the bed, I don't know if I'm getting the right information about that because I keep hearing so many stories. But lately they were saying like there were 30 guns laid out on a bed. Doesn't that sound like gun running? I mean, I don't.
Well, it sounds like it sounds like they're dressing the set here. And here's the problem I have. If you look at the photo of the room, there's two chairs pushed together, and there's a bunch of guns just dumped on them. Now, whether you're planning on using those guns or whether you're planning on selling them, you don't treat the guns that way. Because when you just put all these heavy metal objects together, they can scratch each other, they can knock sights out of alignment. If you talk about anybody who's a gun enthusiast or a gun dealer, they take very good care of those guns because, their value really goes down if they're damaged. So I know a lot of people are trying to push this idea that he was a gun runner for the FBI, but first of all, we don't know how much this guy lost. The Mandalay Bay won't say. They won't say if they've given a number for his gambling activity, but they refuse to say whether it's wins or losses. Apparently, according to his brother, at one point he won $40,000 on a single pull of a slot machine. And by the way, yes, gambling's an addiction. So is alcohol. So is tobacco. So is marijuana. But there are a lot of people who manage their use of all of these. They don't let it get out of control. And in the case of Paddock, this appears to just have been something that he did as a hobby. And yes, he's going to enjoy it. It's going to be a thrill. But he doesn't fit the pattern of being out of control. Because he wasn't broke by any stretch of the imagination. If somebody walked up and tapped him on the shoulder and said, I need $100,000, he could have written that check. He had two single-engine airplanes. He was a multimillionaire. $100,000 to him is not a lot.
I didn't know that the guns were thrown together like that. Yeah, I thought that they were. I thought they were laid out. But no, you're right. I don't. Yeah, I didn't know that it was that way.
Yeah.
And do you think there were multiple shooters? Because my husband's a gun enthusiast, and he's saying that no way that was one shooter. He totally believes it was multiple shooters.
Well, now you've got the chief of police of Las Vegas and the Las Vegas sheriff are now in agreement with him. They're saying this guy had to have help, and the FBI is out there saying, no, it's a crazed lone nut assassin. This formula's worked all the way back to 1963. Why isn't it working now? But again, some of the videos that were taken during this incident, clearly you hear the sound of two different weapons with two different rates of fire going off at the same time. And again, why the second window if there's just one shooter? He's in a perfect position right where he is. He doesn't need that second window for anything.
Yeah, the whole thing is just makes no sense. And then, and I'll hang up real quick, but I just wanted to say, I had called last week, but I disconnected myself. But I was asking about China, and I did find on YouTube some guy, Peter Lavani, or I don't know, Trump hired him. He put out a Netflix 3 years ago movie about China, and he talks about everything that Trump talks about, on the campaign trail, like how we're shipping our jobs overseas. But then he put out another thing on YouTube called "Will We Go to War with China?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of interesting. I mean, it helped me a little bit just to understand things because I'm, public school, right? So I don't know about geography and stuff like that. It was a little interesting. It gave different points of view on China, and I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting.
Well, the ultimate goal of the U.S. foreign policy right now is to find a way to wreck the Chinese yuan and the Russian ruble and bring the world back under the domination of the U.S. Federal Reserve note. Return to Bretton Woods. Because the U.S. economic system made a huge profit off of that Bretton Woods deal. And right now they need to restore that because we've allowed our manufacturing to decline, in part because the manufacturing's gone to China. And nobody wants our GMO agriculture. So right now our country has become a one-crop nation, if you will, and that crop is financial services. But with the rest of the world dropping the dollar and going to the yuan and the ruble, that's why our economy is in such serious trouble. There's nothing else to hold it up.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Mike. All right, I'll make room for other callers, but thanks.
All right, we're going to switch over to Terry in Oregon. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, this morning I woke up and I said, hey, I think my NRA membership's expired. I think I'll get online and renew it. So I got online and probed around the NRA site, and then I looked at some other sites about the NRA, and I found this one that said the NRA gave more money to John McCain than any senator in the Senate. And I said, I don't think this is for me. So then I went over to Gun Owners of America and joined them. At first I asked the girl, I said, you give money to John McCain? And she says, just a minute. She went and asked somebody. She said, no, we supported his opposition last election. So I said, this is for me. Sign me up. And I found out that the dues is half of what the NRA's is. The NRA was $40 a year, and the Gun Owners of America was $20. So I think I made the right. I'm glad I stumbled across that website about John McCain because I'm not a supporter of his or Lindsey Graham or any of the other globalist warmongers, So I just thought I'd pass that on, and, it's about it.
Well, the NRA, the NRA has come under criticism over the last several years because they'll take a strong stand against certain gun legislation. Then all of a sudden at the last minute they pull back and they sort of give way to the gun legislation. They're already out today with an announcement saying that bump stocks ought to be more heavily regulated. And, yeah, I agree with that. that idea, but at the same time, a lot of NRI supporters are viewing this as yet another betrayal in a long series of betrayals.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mike, I'm just coming on. I didn't get you before, but did you talk about the fact that some guys were saying, where's the brass in that room, where you're doing the shooting?
Yeah, there's a few rounds of expended brass on the floor, but it's like those guns dumped onto the chairs. It looks like set decoration. Rather than, there should be a lot more brass there, given the volume of firing that we're hearing on the video. Now, if the majority of the firing was coming from that second room, which still has not been shown, then the brass would have been over there.
You mean on the fourth floor?
No. Remember, there's two broken out windows in two different rooms up there on the top floor. And we've only been shown photos of the window toward the end of that wing of the hotel. The other one, I haven't seen any photos of what that room looks like. And if the additional shooters were in there, there might be a lot more brass there. But frankly, that suite where Paddock was found, it strikes me as feeling like a movie set rather than a real crime scene.
Right, like I say, I'm just coming on. Did you talk about anything about the fourth floor today?
The fourth floor is an open issue. There doesn't seem to be any photos showing a broken window down there. I went to the building plans. There isn't a air conditioning grill or anything there. People are still saying it was just a strobe light. It could also have been a reflection coming from a different source, which means we're looking in the wrong place. But it's an open issue. I got to let you
Mike,
go.
There's the music. I got to let you go because there's the music.
There's the music. Talk to you next time. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go right back to the telephones here. Charles in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Yeah, I've been listening with interest to a lot of the media coverage, and one question's come up in my mind that nobody's covered. People are talking, are there multiple shooters or if there's one shooter, and there is so many guns, and the number of guns has been bandied about. But if it's like any casino that I've run into, there's got to be cameras in the elevator, so there's got to be evidence of him carrying them up to the room or somebody helping him to carry them up to the room, and how he entered the casino would be through the underground or through the front door. So there's got to be, this mystery should be solvable. Is my point.
Well, I got an email from somebody. Now they didn't have a source, but they were just saying that they'd heard on some radio show that the Mandalay Bay. First of all, we know the Mandalay Bay has erased all the data on Paddock's room reservations. That's gone. And according to this email, and I stress that this is unconfirmed at this time, I can't find a confirmation on it, they're saying that the videos of that time period have also been erased.
Well, that would be convenient, wouldn't it?
Yes, very much so.
Because there would be evidence of him carrying all these weapons up there or not, or having help or not. So if they can't provide that, then they must be complicit. Well, you can't guarantee it, but it sounds like they're complicit in this in some fashion.
Well, let's not forget the fact that there is a lot of organized crime that still have interests in Las Vegas, and the CIA has a long history of working with organized crime for certain things. They were using the mafia against the Nazis, against Fidel Castro, and they're all buddy over there. And so it's entirely possible that the owners and managers of the Mandalay Bay were working along with this thing, and they would almost have to, because that's the only way they're going to be indemnified from all these negligence lawsuits that are probably already being cooked up in the minds of the survivors.
Yes, yeah. Another thing that came to mind is apparently he had a camera set up outside his room. Well, room service would see something unusual about that, I would assume, and deal with it, unless of course he had special status with the ownership anyway.
Well, he was a high roller. He was a high roller, and they may have just assumed that he wanted a little extra protection there. But again, the household staff that went into his room right up to very early on the day of the shooting itself, they didn't see anything suspicious. It all had to come on in at the last second, including the camera. And by the way, they're saying that the camera was not recording. Paddock's camera was not recording. So we don't have anything from that.
Well, it would take a lot of work to bring those materials up, but he's not a young man, so it would have taken some time to do it. So I don't know. It's just another question. So thanks for giving me a little bit of an answer. So it sounds like the materials have been erased. Okay.
Well, like I said, I'm not able to confirm this email that says that the hotel's security has been erased. I'm still looking for it. We have to take a break for station identification. Back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we are going to take James in Texas. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, can you hear me?
I hear you just fine.
Yes, I find it hard to believe that all the video has been wiped. When you think about
now, again, that is not confirmed. That is not confirmed. Okay, it's just an email I got from.
That's what I'm saying. You're looking at the system. The system that we're looking at is Las Vegas. This thing is connected with Interpol, with the NSA. It has to run all the criminal databases because it's basically set up to catch. You know, think about it. It's Las Vegas. It's set up there to catch the gamblers. It has to have all that database, and those videos have to be stored in file places. So it can't be no rinky-dinky security system. I mean, these things can see the numbers on your cards that you have in your hand. They could read things from miles away. They can do that.
Oh yeah, they can. Now, forgetting about NSA and Interpol and the rest of it, Las Vegas casinos have a joint system where there are people who are blacklisted from gambling. People who have been caught cheating, people who are very good at counting cards and are. You can be blacklisted from a casino, and there's not really much you can do about it. And so they keep a database, and yeah, the cameras are there to look for these people trying to sneak back on in.
Yeah, the facial software is phenomenal. It had the facial recognition software that they have, and the retina software is just amazing, especially from yards and feet away. You know, that's what I'm saying. The information it's there. Somebody has it. Definitely somebody has that stuff. And they would be able to tell if it really was that person or not, or be able to really tell. I mean, from all it could be, you know, off. I don't know. It just, if you know anything about Las Vegas, you know the stuff is there. It's not no rinky-dink security.
No, it isn't. I mean, many years ago when I was still a professional magician, I'd work out there in Las Vegas. And I got to see a lot of stuff behind the scenes. But again, I want to stress, I read an email that I received from somebody who claims to have heard on the radio that the hotel security tapes were erased, but I cannot confirm it. It may just be somebody putting out some ridiculous nonsense. And until
it has to be ridiculous.
Okay.
This is Las Vegas we're talking about. This is Las Vegas. The security system, come on. That's what I'm saying. People need to understand what this is. This is Las Vegas.
Well, I'm sure if the boss were to walk on in, I'm sure if the boss were to walk on in and say, I need you to delete everything from this time to this time, it would definitely be carried out. Anyway, James, we're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over.
Somebody else has it.
James, we're going to let you go and switch over to Jeff in Clearwater. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just wanted to comment on the liability of Mandalay Bay for the shooting. I'm a tort lawyer, so I know a little bit about this. Mm-hmm. For a negligent security claim, the hotel would have to owe a duty of care to the people who are injured. And unless Mandalay Bay owns the concert venue, there's no duty owed to those persons. Someone who gets shot on the premises of Mandalay Bay probably has a decent cause of action. But somebody who's not on the premises has no connection to the hotel, doesn't have a valid claim for negligent security because there's no duty owed.
Well, I think the counter-argument could be made that Mandalay Bay's negligence in allowing the shooting placed the people inside the Mandalay Bay at risk as well.
Well, anyone who actually was injured inside the hotel would have a claim. But if no one was injured, if you're not injured, then you don't have damages, and then the claim fails. Okay. But, I agree that somebody that's on the hotel premises may have a valid claim, but unless the hotel owns the concert venue, I don't think that there's going to be a valid basis to bring a claim.
Well, I imagine we'll find out when this goes to court.
Yeah, and I'll be watching. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but I predict you'll see a lot of dismissals.
Well, okay, I think it should go the other way. I mean, clearly Mandalay Bay was negligent in its security, and people were injured and killed as a result. And the fact that they were across the street, I don't think should be a factor when you're dealing basically with a shooting incident. But then, if I were a judge, that's the way I would basically rule on this thing. But we'll see. Time will solve this mystery for us. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And I'm going to get on back to doing some actual real news here. Now, as you know, the people who were over at the Senate Intelligence Committee were trying to find some confirmation that the incidents described in the Trump dossier really did happen, that Donald Trump really did all those icky-poo things with the prostitutes in the Moscow hotel. And they've hit a bit of a problem because Christopher Steele, the former MI6 agent who provided the dossier, isn't talking. He's stonewalling. And so the Senate Intelligence Committee said, well, we've hit the wall. We've given up on trying to verify the contents. Well, Bob Mueller has now taken it over. He's out there saying, I'll take the Trump dossier. I will find or make verification. It's another bit in his arsenal to get the president at any costs here. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And as you know, lately, a lot of pressure is being brought to bear on Russia Today. And they're talking about shutting down their U.S. studio, saying they're literally being driven on out. And the rationale for all of this in a nation that's supposed to have a First Amendment is Russia Today is fake news. They're the fake news because they don't agree with what America's corporate media is saying. Russians are evil. It's all fake news. And Trump came out with a really good response to that. Why isn't the Senate looking into the fake news coming out of our corporate networks in this country? Because he himself has felt the wrath of the fake news coming out of America's TV networks. And it would be nice to see something done about that. It would be nice to see the news go back to reporting the news instead of being everybody's hired propaganda prostitutes and correspondents. Then I could retire from all of this and spend the rest of my life as Claire's roadie, which is what I really prefer to be doing. Okay, I guess we have Alan in California on the line. Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Mike.
Yes, Alan.
Hi, Mike.
What's going on?
There was a couple of things about the Vegas false flag that I wanted to get your opinion on after, researching and listening to some different videos and stuff. I don't know. It doesn't something about there was Trump met with. Are you familiar with Sheldon Adelson?
Oh yeah,
Adelson. He's like the biggest player. Adelson. He's the biggest player there in Vegas as far as like. Well, he met with him hours after the shooting, and they said, "Oh, there was an appointment already made to talk about policy, but it just happened that he talked to him."
Wait a minute. I thought that right after the shooting happened, I mean, Trump was on his way to Puerto Rico, and he didn't get out to Las Vegas for a couple of days. So there's a problem there with that timeline.
No, but this was a meeting at the White House. Where Sheldon Adelson and his wife were over there.
Okay.
And just the timing seems a little weird. Also, something else that came up,
Well, can we stop here for a second? Can we stop here for a second and rewind a little bit here? The first question would be that I would ask is, how much interest in the Mandalay Bay Resort does Sheldon Adelson own? That's a valid question right there.
Exactly. But there's something else also. The CEO of Mandalay Bay and MGM Resorts is James J. Mirren.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with him.
No.
But anyway, he's I guess he's the CEO of MGM Resorts in Mandalay Bay. James J. Mirren. Anyway, he's the head of the National Infrastructure Advisory Council.
Okay.
That's currently, and he's a huge Hillary supporter. That I don't know if you know, as far as like the Mandalay Bay and MGM being like big non-Trumpers and stuff like that. So, I mean, how can a guy that's a big Hillary supporter and stuff like that be in charge of our national infrastructure? I mean, this doesn't smell right, you know what I mean?
Well, I think Trump, again, when Trump won the White House, he wanted to be magnanimous in victory, and he came on in trying to find the best people for certain jobs, not realizing that Washington, D.C. does not act like a corporation where people are automatically loyal to the boss who signs their paycheck. And I think it was one of his biggest mistakes. But as long as the guy is doing the job that Trump thinks he needs to be doing, his political affiliation really should not dominate the discussion. And in fact, I think we've reached a stage in our country right now where there's too much politics in general. Everything goes through that filter of politics, especially the political correctness. And it really is to the detriment of our society. Everybody's afraid to talk with each other. Everybody's afraid to write something down. Oh, is it politically correct? What the heck with political correctness? Let's just get stuff done. Let's just go back to being people, talking to each other about what we're doing. Repairing the roof, going to the grocery store, and the rest of it, and not filter everything through politics. Because that's just another way of getting us under control, that we consider the political dimensions of everything that we do. That's fine for the politicians. It's a waste of time for us.
Yeah, we need more statesmen instead of politicians. Polly is many, and Tick is a blood-sucking insect.
I would agree with you on that one.
I just thought, those two connections and the Las Vegas shooting kind of, something just didn't, I just wanted to get your opinion, just didn't seem right. Just wanted to throw food for thought there.
Okay, well, thanks an awful lot, and we're going to let you go.
Thanks, Mike.
All righty, and let me hit a few things here. Now, getting on over to the war zones, of which we have many. Apparently, the Syrian army has struck ISIS near the Mayadin. And apparently the main obstacle faced by the anti-terrorist forces in Syria is not the military capabilities of the terrorists, but rather the support of the United States. This is coming from Russia's Defense Ministry spokesman, Major General Igor Konashenkov. And basically saying that 300 ISIS members whom allegedly seized Al-Qayyatine city came from the town of Rubkan, avoiding Syrian army posts and using coordinates that could only have been attained through aerial reconnaissance. Now, ISIS does not have their own sophisticated aerial drones, so the allegation here is that the U.S. is feeding them intelligence data. And, of course, the Pentagon's already out there denying it, saying, us? Help ISIS? What a ridiculous thing for you to even think. I didn't even know how to respond to that. Tinfoil hat conspiracy kooks out there. Us helping ISIS? I mean, that's just ridiculous. Story along the same line from 12160. Russia says that ISIS attacks in Syria are coming from a location near the U.S. forces. So Russia has upped the ante. They've gone from just saying that the U.S. seems to just endlessly, accidentally help ISIS and harm Syria to just outright saying, yeah, the U.S. and ISIS are working together. The U.S. is still desperate to find some way to turn the situation around in Syria. It's not going to succeed. This war is all but over. The only way that the U.S. Can reverse the situation in Syria is with a direct decapitation strike on Assad himself, which would be an act of war. And I can imagine that there are some defensive forces around Assad's position, including Russian forces, and that may be the only thing deterring a decapitation strike, because when the United States government starts bombing Russian forces, that basically is the open door to a war. Now, earlier today, Donald Trump was sort of teasing out the fact that he was going to announce his decision on the Iran nuclear deal next week. It's already leaked on out. Trump is going to declare that the Iran nuclear deal is not in the national interest. He's going to decertify the international nuclear deal and kick the issue over to Congress, who really doesn't want to get involved on this thing. But here's what's going on here. Trump is saying that he's going to decertify the deal because the deal is not in the national interest as he sees it. He has no evidence that Iran has not kept their part of the deal. There is none. IAEA is confirmed. Iran is fully in compliance. If Donald Trump goes through this, it is sending a message to every other government on the face of planet Earth, including North Korea, that you cannot take the U.S. government's word for anything. They'll make all kinds of grandiose promises, and as soon as it suits them, they'll go back on them. They did that in Libya. They got Libya to surrender their nuclear weapons program with a promise we'd leave you alone, then they invaded Libya. They got Iraq to surrender their chemical weapons and said, we will leave you alone, and then they invaded multiple times. They got Assad to surrender his chemical weapons and said, we'll leave you alone, and they've invaded Syria. Not working out as well as the U.S. government wanted. And now they're getting ready to break the deal with Iran. So what is North Korea's government, or for that matter, any government on earth, going to think when the U.S. comes knocking on the door and says, if you will give up these chemical weapons or biological weapons or nuclear weapons, we promise we will never invade you? What are they supposed to think? They're going to think that listening to the U.S. government and believing anything they say is the stupidest possible thing they could ever do. Now, interestingly enough, following the referendum on the Kurds' secession, and remember, the Kurdish regional government is saying it's going to be a minimum of 2 years before anything happens. But over in Iran, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is saying that Iran and Turkey have to prevent the Iraqi Kurd secession out of their concern that it's going to become another Israeli stronghold in the middle of the Middle East, and they've already got their hands full with the one that's out there. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Chet in Michigan, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, aloha, Mike. Hey, I wanted to comment on the press conference that occurred yesterday, held by the Clark County Sheriff. I can't quite remember his name. But my background is in law enforcement. I spent more than 2 decades in law enforcement. Half of that was in as a command officer. So I've participated in these kind of things, and I've been around a lot of chiefs and other executives. And I just got a really strange feeling from this sheriff. And the message, I really can't put my finger on it, but the message he had, the message from the senator, as well as the FBI guy, who appeared to be more of a handler for the sheriff than anything else. But basically the message was, we're not going to tell you anything. You know, yes. The sheriff rambled on for a long time, but it was really just pointing out the obvious and kind of, reiterating what we already knew. But every time there was a follow-up question, he gave no answer to that. And it just seemed like the main purpose of the press conference was to tell everybody, be patient, don't expect any information until we're ready to give it to you. And it just seemed to be the opposite, purpose of most press conferences, which is to inform you. And it's got a really weird feeling. Now, in contrast, the fire chief today was very forthcoming. He seemed relaxed, because the incident is 3 or 4 days old. So, there shouldn't be this emotional baggage that the sheriff seemed to have. You know, before he started talking, he put his head down and gave this long sigh. You know, but as professionals, you know, we're supposed to rise above that, and after 3 or 4 days, you know, you should be prepared to handle that.
Okay,
so,
Chet,
you know,
Chet, I'm going to have to put you on hold. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're still talking with Chet in Michigan, and you were talking about, based on your experience in law enforcement, that the press conference held in Clark County, and by the way, technically the Mandalay Bay is not in the city of Las Vegas. It's considered Clark County. And how the sheriff, you just felt that his press conference was all about telling everybody, you're not going to get any more information. They're probably scared we'll pick it apart. We certainly did on the Boston Marathon bombing. We certainly did on Sandy Hook. So there's going to be this void. They don't want to let anything out. They're scared that we'll see the problems with it. In fact, I'm looking at an article over at onesource.com where apparently that video that captures the sound of 2 different firearms with 2 different firing rates, apparently the corporate media is out there demanding that it be taken down from the internet. Well, it doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the individual who shot that video. But apparently they're very, very nervous about this stuff. So anyway, Chet, please pick up where you left off.
Okay, I won't be long. I just wanted to put out that there was one piece of information that the sheriff did produce, and it was pretty clear that he was really pushing that, and that was the idea that there may have been a second person or more involved. He really did want to make that clear, and I thought that was the one thing he shouldn't have said because there's no real proof of that. But that's the one thing that he did put out there.
Well, I noticed how the FBI immediately tried to leap on in and say, no, you're wrong. There was only one guy. So.
Yeah, he was standing behind him for a reason, and I think that was it, just to monitor what he said and keep him in line. So I'm sure you have a lot of other callers. I appreciate the time you're giving me, though, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot here, and we're going to switch over to Terry in El Paso. Aloha, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, I was wondering if you might remember back about 5 years ago, whenever the government was saying that the far right was going to merge with Al-Qaeda. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, so what are we seeing here? We have the far right, a gun owner, being, connected with Al-Qaeda. That's my point. That's it.
No, nobody's made that connection yet. I mean, everybody's saying is connected with everybody. You've got Alex Jones saying he's connected to Antifa and to ISIS. You've got these other people saying he's connected to the FBI, that he was gun running for them. You've got these other people out there saying he was connected to organized crime and so forth. Basically what they're trying to do is keep the scene as confused as possible to make it hard for us to figure out what's going on, especially as actual factual information is being withheld, as that previous caller pointed on out. They're trying to keep us in an information vacuum and just throw a lot of noise and dust into the air because they're scared we're going to pull this story apart. But again, the damage is already done. We've been lied to so many times that for many, if not most Americans, the safe assumption is this is just more of the same deceptions this government has been dishing out to us for all of our lifetime.
You're the man, Mike. See you later.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Kevin in West Virginia. Aloha, Kevin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Kevin, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes. What's on your mind today?
All right. This guy clearly had help. This guy, I mean, I don't know who he's connected to or anything, but this guy clearly had help. And going into, I think Soros is connected to casino, and I think he had inside help with the casino operators and everything. I mean, when you're in a casino or a hotel and you stay, the first night they go through your stuff. I mean, I know most people don't want to believe that, but they really do. The hotel staff goes through your stuff. And also, casinos, hotels, places like that. What is that? Car rentals. They're threat fusion centers. So this guy killed people right out of a threat fusion center. And I clearly believe this guy was a patsy. And I don't know if you've seen the interview with his brother, but that guy's Mr. Squirrely. I think they need to be looking into his whole family.
All right, well, listen, we're going to have to take a break here for commercials. Back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show, and I'm looking on the corporate media, and here comes the pitch. The reason for that stage shooting in Las Vegas, they want to repeal the Second Amendment. Now, that's going to be a bit of a trick, because the only way you can change the Constitution is with a new amendment. That means Congress has to pass a bill that says the Second Amendment is hereby repealed. The president has to sign it. Then it has to go to the states. And 3/4 of the states must ratify that bill exactly as it's written. And that means their legislature votes on it, passes it, their chief of state, their governor, signs it. That's a long, long way to go, but that is the only legal way to repeal the Second Amendment. I told you the gun grabbers are coming. The gun grabbers are coming. All right, let's see. We're going to take another phone call. Rob in Illinois. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. As we're a colony of Israel, it's our fault having the guns that they didn't succeed in taking out Syria. So they, instead of the First Amendment first, they take out the Second Amendment, so then they can take away the First Amendment. It's all in the higher plans, everybody.
Oh, yeah. If they take away the Second Amendment, if they confiscate the guns, the rest of the Bill of Rights is absolutely meaningless. The reason the Second Amendment is there is to give teeth to the other 9.
Absolutely. Which corporate outlet did you say that was saying scrub YouTube?
Basically, it's a call from all of the corporate media. They're claiming that they're claiming this video is too shocking and horrific, and the Americans must be protected from it, which is nonsense. I mean, there's a lot of shocking, horrific stuff that's on corporate TV that you pay-per-view and everything. No, what they want is they're trying to find some way they can justify erasing from the internet all of these videos that contradict the official story, especially that one that captures the sound of 2 different firearms with 2 different rates of fire operating at the same time. Now, there was a caller into the show, I think in hour number 1, who basically came on out and said that many of the videos that he had been looking at on YouTube, the first generation videos, have already been taken down. They're trying to basically erase all of that so that we have no other resource other than the word of the government and the corporate media as to what happened in Las Vegas, which is rather pointless. If the government told me it was going to be a sunshiny day, I would take an umbrella with me. Same thing for the corporate media.
Which is, on Tuesday, I quickly learned how to download YouTube videos. It was pretty simple to do. And I downloaded a few.
Yeah, it is. The YouTube downloader I used to have on Firefox was disabled by YouTube's latest format change. You do need to be very careful about downloading these YouTube download tools because some of them are infected with malware. It's a favorite vector for the cyber criminals to get into your system.
I didn't download anything. Basically, all you do is take SS and put it right after www. Or HTTPS, whichever one, just put SS in front of it, and then it'll bring you to another page, and then you just say, it says, I've got a line, I want to click that, I want to download it, and it'll say low quality or medium quality, and then you just click that, and it's down in a matter of minutes or search.
Can you email that to me? Can you email that to me, because that would be very, very useful.
Well, all I did is search how to download a YouTube video, and the first couple of videos that popped up, they were both saying that. So even if you erase all the www. And the HTTPS and just put SS in front of the YouTube part, then you'll still go to that same page.
Okay. And it's okay.
Go ahead. Did you find it?
No, I'm going to wait till after the show to do it.
Okay. Scott Bennett on Monday night picked out a video, and he's like, yeah, I see the muzzle flashes on 2 different floors, Scott Bennett from Shell Games.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, I picked these out, and he made a JPEG, and he pointed them out, but then he went back, this by Wednesday, he says, I went back for the video, it was gone.
Yeah.
So that's, on Tuesdays when I started downloading them. But
yeah, Winston Smith is earning his overtime right now.
Yeah, well, I'm going to put out some for you, Mike, and I would wish I'm going to say my wishes. I would suggest this to all media outlets. Put out a call to all these people out there. Email it to us. That way it'll be in your possession and not in the open of these private entities. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
So that would be great. But the big deal is to get that message out. So at least if we tell it to the audience, that audience can tell it to another audience, and so on and so on and so on. And then we can collectively gather this stuff. Because being on YouTube, Vimeo, wherever, we know they're volatile. They're in jeopardy.
Yes.
The big deal I called about today was I'm glad you mentioned about the alarms being connected to the windows. Once there's a breach in any of those, there's just like it goes into a panel, and they know where the breach came from. So there's one thing that's out the window. And the other thing, people talk about the 4th floor. Was there any broken windows there? I heard, again, this is hearsay, but a broadcaster was saying today that they went over, got somehow the floor plans or whatnot, and those windows actually open and close for the window washers.
Ah, okay, that makes a lot of sense then.
Okay?
That makes a lot of sense.
And there's a third thing here that these hotels, the big ones like Mandalay, installed those. I can always forget them. Those scatters, the scanners. What do they call them?
Backscatter.
Backscatter. There you go. They literally can count the change in your pocket. They've installed these to all these entrances of these buildings.
Well, they certainly didn't work very well.
Well, that's why we know. I mean, of course, us in the open world here in the Matrix know this is bad from start to finish. There's just no way any of this could happen, period.
Yes.
And, I want to go, and Telehub's got those videos for Bellagio. There's one lady that did the live stream on Facebook. She's got 2 videos, and that's eyewitness claims bullets flew into the Bellagio lobby 30 to 45 minutes after the massacre. That's on in Telehub. And then you're going to have shooter's brother linked to Crisis Communications Management PR firm and Pulse nightclub, because during his second interview, he was wearing a shirt linked to this Crisis PR firm or Crisis Center, where it was all sketchy in a second, where he does a 180.
Okay.
Those are both on Telehub. I forwarded you that, and I don't know if you ever get my emails, but the first word is, it's an @Gmail, but it's the first one is Chicago, blank, @ Gmail. So I forwarded that to you. I don't know if you'll get it.
I'm looking at one of them right now.
Okay, and Jeff Rentz did this. Okay, they leaked out these. The only thing we got from inside is mysteriously leaked photographs from inside the room. And of course, you pointed out it's staged. It's all staged, disorganized. You could see where they just laid out a few shell casings and whatnot.
Yeah.
Replan or whatever. But look at the headshot where there's a puddle of blood. You got one. There's a big deal about this. You got one puddle that's all dried out, absorbed into the carpet spot. Then you got a second spot, which is all it's fresh, just beautifully fresh with the shell casings neatly on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to Jeff Rentz, he released his article late last night, and he points it out how the shell casings are nice parallel next to each other. There's not enough shell casings in this room for the amount of shots that were fired, and so on and so on and so on. And the last thing I want to point out is there's very possibly in some of these videos you can actually pull out a third shooter. So just the package videos you're looking at or listening to, and so on.
Yes. Well, I mean, the issue is here. We already have enough information to cast doubt on the official story, and we now even have the sheriff of Clark County out there saying there had to be other participants. And when you have the FBI standing up and saying, no, there's no other participants. And like I said, this reminds me about the girl in the polka dot dress, who multiple witnesses saw with Sirhan just before the assassination of Robert Kennedy, and they tried to make her go away. You know, they browbeat all the witnesses to retract their statements, change their stories.
Well, I'm going to say for myself to the listening audience here, I am not jumping to any conclusions. Yes, Lee Harvey Paddock fits in here somewhere, but where does he fit in? True Patsy? Was he working with other people? We don't know. I'm just gathering all this stuff and absorbing it, looking it over, listening to different broadcasters, different takes, and whatever, and I'm not jumping to any conclusions. The only conclusion I know is this is dirty. It's dirty back to, again, Kennedy's assassination, September 11th, Charlottesville, on and on and on. It's a playbook. It's just a different time, and now we actually have the tools and the materials to catch on to it faster. And that's fortunate for us for the time being. As you mentioned, they're already trying to go after us on these websites, and, if you look at them, you're going to be in trouble, So, and the last thing is, not only the Bellagio was there shots fired, but there was reports at two other hotels, one being, and I can't find confirmation on this, one being New York, and someone else mentioned it, Tropicana.
Yeah, and I don't know if somebody was just out there playing a sick trick with firecrackers or something, but it doesn't make sense that half an hour after this big shooting at the Mandalay Bay that there would still be anybody out there that was shooting, because it basically undermines the story of the lone shooter who committed suicide in the room. What's that supposed to be? His ghost is going on down the road? And
according to the Bellagio,
yeah,
I'm sorry, the Bellagio, the report is they shot out the front doors or the windows of the front doors. That's the report there.
Okay, I hadn't seen that. I hadn't seen that, and I'd like to see pictures and photos of it. It may be that Las Vegas is very concerned that all these shootings are going to decrease tourism to their resorts, and it probably would. And maybe after the Mandalay Bay went on out, there was just a quick little conference call saying if there's any more, it doesn't get on out. And that may be what's going on there. Yeah.
They allowed this to happen there. Nothing happens there without them knowing about it, period. They allowed this to happen, and I think it has something to do with they've been losing money for years, and there's this upcoming crisis where everything's going to hit the hellhole. And maybe they're like, well, let's screw it. Let's just do it. Maybe they got a handsome payoff, risk reward.
And
just like Silverstein. Silverstein got a handsome payoff. Right now, the immediate thing they're doing is they're already looking to put Israeli security firms for all these hotel casinos in the area. And the other thing is the Chertoff, what is it, Chertoff?
Yeah, Chertoff Group.
All his guys. Yeah, all his in there. So there's two, like the way.
Okay, you're going to have to talk closer to your phone microphone. I don't know why the phone quality in this country has gone downhill the way it has, but it's very, very hard. Rob, we're going to let you go here. I need to get back to news. We're running out of time here. So thank you very much. And let's see, we're talking about the various war zones. And before we get back to the war zones, there is one other possible explanation for what happened at the Bellagio and some of these other hotels, and that is that, being Las Vegas, there were probably some nutcases there who figured, hey, we'll just fire a few shots off ourselves, and shot out the windows on a casino where they'd lost a lot of money or been turned down by the waitresses or something like that. And Las Vegas is a city of extremes. All right, getting back to the war zones. Apparently, Secretary of Defense James Mattis is revealing specifics on changes to the U.S. rules of engagement in Afghanistan. And basically, it comes down to a substantial loosening of restrictions on strikes. Now, up until recently, there was a restriction where the U.S. was not allowed to bomb Afghanistan unless they were bombing in close proximity to ground forces in order to protect those ground forces. Well, now the Air Force can just bomb wherever they want. And apparently commanders on the ground have been given much more latitude to act unilaterally. And it basically allows U.S. forces to carry out strikes anywhere in Afghanistan they want on essentially any pretext. And officials are presenting that as a way to try and speed up the escalation of the war. So more war over there. Very interesting article out of Russia Today. Top Pentagon officials are basically informing Congress and the rest of us that the U.S. is going to stay in Afghanistan indefinitely. Now, that's costing $12.5 billion every single year for the U.S. involvement in Afghanistan. And the Pentagon is saying, we're there forever. We don't want the Taliban to think they can simply wait us out. We will go on fighting the war in Afghanistan, even if it means leaving every American taxpayer broke, starving, and living in the streets, apparently is what they're saying. Apparently 3 Green Berets have been killed in an al-Qaeda ambush near the Mali-Niger border. Now, we know that shortly after Germany's demand for gold repatriation from not only the New York Fed but the Bank of France, France invaded Mali. And apparently the U.S. is down there on the ground helping them. Although, according to this article, the U.S. forces are on the side of Niger. 5 soldiers from Niger were killed. Everybody's fighting everybody here. Getting on over to North Korea. U.S. sorties near North Korea will continue despite threats of being shot down. U.S. Pacific Air Force General Terrence O'Shaughnessy maintains U.S. warplanes will continue to fly near the Korean Peninsula in accordance with international guidelines despite North Korean threats to take down U.S. warplanes. I hope those pilots in those flights understand they're being set up to be a bloody shirt for the U.S. to wave to get us into war. That's the only reason to put those planes over there, is in the hope North Korea will shoot one of them down. Or for all we know, the U.S. may shoot one of them down themselves and not wait for North Korea. They're clearly desperate to get all this global conflagration going as quickly as they can here. Now, a top CIA official for the Korean Peninsula is basically saying the U.S. should be ready for a new provocation on Columbus Day. More about this when we come back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're talking about this prediction coming from Young-Suk Lee. He's the Deputy Assistant Director to the CIA's Korea Mission Center. And he was speaking at a conference organized by the agency at George Washington University, and he predicted we will see a provocation from North Korea on Columbus Day, which is October 9th. Now, obviously, on the other side of the international date line, it'll be October 10th, which is a holiday in North Korea, the anniversary of the founding of the political party that governs in Pyongyang. And we know from past history that Kim Jong-un likes to coincide missile tests with the holidays. It's kind of like having fireworks and stuff. But again, that's probably what we're talking about here, a test. Now, isn't it funny? When the U.S. tests a weapon, it's a test. When Russia tests a weapon, it's a test. When North Korea tests a weapon, it's a dangerous provocation. And even this CIA agent is out there saying that the chance that North Korea is actually going to do something that would lead to war is very low. It's going to be another missile test. That's it. Now, apparently Russia, trying to forestall the collapse of North Korea, which would allow basically U.S. troops to deploy on Russia's eastern border, they're throwing economic lifeline to North Korea to make up the shortfall caused by all these sanctions. Because Russia is starting to feel very threatened by the United States. If you look at all of these nations across Asia and Europe that the U.S. has gone into, it's very obviously an attempt to encircle Russia and ring them in with THAAD missiles in advance of an eventual attack. And as Paul Craig Roberts was reporting just a couple of months ago, there are people in Washington, D.C. who are out there saying, yeah, let's just go ahead and nuke them. These people really are insane. They are insane. They actually think you can win a nuclear war, and no, you cannot. The only way you can win a nuclear war is if you're the only one with the nukes, like the U.S. against Japan at the end of World War II. But then we know the U.S. always likes to whoop on people who can't fight back. Apparently down in Israel, police investigators are getting ready to grill Benjamin Netanyahu about 2 new scandals regarding abuse of power charges. And if convicted, he would be removed from office. There's a lot of people within Israel who do not like Netanyahu, and they would like to see him go away here. Now, one of our callers was talking about this earlier. Russia and Saudi Arabia are announcing billions of dollars in energy deals, and tied up with that is Russia is selling the S-400 missile defense system to Saudi Arabia. So it looks like Saudi Arabia is starting to pivot away from the United States. We'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to the news here. It's amazing how this NFL nonsense is just dragging on and dragging on and dragging on. And it is really turning people off to the sport as a whole. And it's really reached the point of ridiculousness here. All righty, let's see. Getting on back here to the economic news. As I mentioned in a phone call earlier in the show, Venezuelan President Maduro is calling for an end of the U.S. dollar in the global oil trade, saying that the ruble and the yuan are far more trustworthy and reliable. And, of course, this is music to the ears of both Russia and China. And, again, Maduro may find himself on the receiving end of a drone strike about that, because you never question the security and safety of the U.S. dollar, no matter how many of them we have to print up. Now, over in Spain's financial markets, the chaos in Catalonia is having an effect and driving prices down. So that thing is definitely, that's heating up over there. It's looking like neither side is going to give way. And it could lead to a civil war. And unless you're an arms maker, civil wars are bad for business. Certainly ends tourism. Now, down in Puerto Rico, their economy has obviously taken a huge hit from the hurricanes. And their bonds have collapsed to $33.45. It's a major drop, over 5%, almost 6%. And apparently it's predicted Puerto Rico will just flat out run out of cash on October 31st. And this may be a beg for more cash to come on in, handouts. Unfortunately, if the beg is coming from the Clinton Foundation, you know that the Puerto Ricans will not get hardly any of it, because that's exactly what happened over in Haiti. It's vulture capitalism. You wait for a disaster, you go on in, you take advantage of it. Buy up land at pennies on the dollar. Now, apparently, getting back to the issue of inflation, the world's private central banks have unleashed an inflationary storm. And basically, globally, central banks are now printing over $120 billion per month. And this is happening at a time when most major economies are actually out of harm's way. Obviously, that doesn't apply here to the United States of America. Basically, this is the equivalent of Germany's gross domestic product poured into the cash supply per month. And as I said, while they're trying to pretend that there's no inflation in this country, just like they're trying to pretend there's no massive unemployment, you'll be faced with a reality next time you go to the grocery store or to fill up your car. Because Claire and I got that education just yesterday down at our local supermarket. I couldn't believe how high the prices are. And not just for food, battery prices. It's really just, it's becoming insane out there. Okay, let's see. We're going to take a phone call. Mike in Indiana, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, this is Tom in Indiana.
Tom in Indiana.
That's all right.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you. I own 4 registered machine guns.
Okay.
And the deal is they had to have been owned by a civilian and registered to a civilian prior to May of 1986.
Yes.
And that's a limited market, and that's why the price is so high, because you have to find civilian that wants to sell it to you. That's why the price is so high. But the transfer fee is only $200. But it takes about 8 months, and they tell me now the new vendors that sell machine guns tell me that they put new people in there, and it's they speeded up the process. But I still say it's about 8 months for you to transfer a machine gun. Now, as far as the bump fires, the price on the bump fires went from $99 to over $400 overnight, and they're mostly sold out everywhere. I've seen sold out everywhere. You just can't even get on the site for them, and I really don't think too much of them myself. As you see, the shooter had trouble with those things. They jammed, and then he threw his guns down. So it's not that he really cared about the guns. When he was in the fit, when those things stopped working, he threw them down. So that's why they're probably all over the place. The other thing I wanted to say is the guy.
Well, if you're talking about the 2 guns that were on the floor over by the window in the suite, only one of those has a bump stock.
Well, I'm just saying that there was guns scattered all around. As I wasn't there, that's what somebody said, so I don't know.
Yes.
But what I want to say is. The guy next door said there was probably 2 shooters. He thought he heard somebody else in there. Now, let me give you this little seed here. Here's a guy that is an older guy, but he needs somebody to help him that's athletic, can get all this stuff in there, run around and shoot and all this. Somebody that had a built-up hostility all this time. He has a deep hatred of some people, And I'm just wondering, where was OJ that night?
Anyway, all right.
Let you go with that. I sure appreciate you, man.
All right,
you hang in there.
Thanks an awful lot. Here, we're going to let you go. We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates rejoining our network here. Getting on back to Catalonia, Brussels has come on out and said, delivered an ultimatum to Catalonia. If you quit Spain, you quit the European Union. And so far, the reaction from Catalonia seems to be, okay. I'm sure that Catalonia would like to be out of the European Union. More and more regions want out. It was a raw deal. It was just supposed to be a free trade, free travel bloc. And over time, Brussels has basically arrogated more authority to itself. And it has really angered the people of Europe over 3 issues. The economic predations of the European Central Bank, the open borders policy, and this continuing intrusion into the member nations' internal affairs to a very fine, nitpicky level. Now, right now, the European Union Parliament is dealing with the criticism of the world about the Catalan referendum crackdown. And we've all seen the videos where the Spanish police from outside came on in. They were literally kicking people, knocking them to the ground, literally jumping up and down and stomping on them, stealing the ballot boxes, stealing the ballots. And as I pointed out earlier in the show, this is what happens when you surrender your guns. The uniformed goons will come on in and just feel they can get away with doing whatever they want to do. The Catalan people had no way to fight back against these assaults by the Spanish police. But the European Union Parliament is now out there trying to defend this police brutality, the theft of the ballot boxes, and so forth, as proportionate force. It's okay because it was proportionate. We could have gone even further, but we didn't. We held back. Therefore, this is acceptable. And apparently, European Commission First Vice President Franz Timmermans said it is a duty for any government to uphold the rule of law, and this sometimes requires the proportionate use of force. There's only one small problem. All of those member states of the European Union are also members of the United Nations. And the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which all members of the United Nations have pledged to comply with, guarantees the right of peaceful self-determination. So in this case, the law is wrong. You just have this spoiled Spanish king, Philip VI. He's saying, I want to keep Catalonia. We need their money. Send in the forces. Now he's sending the army. They're courting civil war. How is that upholding the law? All right, we're going to take a... before we take the phone call, one follow-up on this thing. Apparently the Washington Post, the Washington Compost, came on out with an editorial that is blaming the Catalonian referendum on, drumroll please, Russia. It's all the fault of those evil Russians. How dare they interfere? All right, we're going to take a phone call. Jeremiah in Wyoming. Aloha, Jeremiah. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, quick question for you.
Yeah.
With all these shootings going on over the years, especially this one being probably the most brutal that we've seen, do you think this is all just for a gun grab, or do you think there's more to it?
No, I think it's a gun grab because they weren't able to get what they wanted with the previous staged shootings, so they're just ramping up. And again, I am concerned that if the liberals, the gun grabbers, don't get an immediate response, they'll stage more of these things. They're just going to go on killing people until they get the gun ban, the repeal of the Second Amendment that they want, because they're absolutely scared out of their minds that the American people just don't want to go along with this nonsense any longer.
Yeah. It just seems like, I don't know, it just seemed like there's more to it. You know, just because, I mean, I don't know, it seems like an awful hell of a lot of work just over some guns, you know, it's just, I don't know, it's mind-boggling to me that they're
when you consider how important it is to the gun grabbers that the American people be disarmed so that the police can stomp on them, without interference, no amount of effort is too great. No amount of deaths are too great. That's the way they're thinking about this. If they have to, they'll kill thousands and thousands of Americans until they can scare Americans into saying, yes, repeal the Second Amendment, which won't disarm the terrorists or the criminals. Because remember, our government has been spending your tax dollars to give military-style weapons, full auto weapons, to drug cartels in Mexico. And some of those have come back into the United States of America and been used to kill people.
I just really hope this doesn't scare off, even a lot of the peak conservatives that have guns, that I really hope that they don't just start giving up their arms because of the emotions coming from this event.
No, they'll never give up their guns. They just want you to give up yours. I mean, we had that story the other day where,
I'm talking to, sorry. I'm just talking to people themselves. I hope because of this event, they don't start giving in to what these globalists are shooting for, you know what I mean?
Well, I certainly hope not, too. And again, if you want to find out a reason for the people to keep and bear arms, you look at what's going on over in Catalonia right now.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, well, I appreciate it, Mike.
All right, well, thank you. We're going to let you go and switch over to Craig in Seattle. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. I did hear you earlier state something about bump stocks, about regulating them. No disrespect.
The NRA.
I'm sorry. No.
Okay, the NRA has issued a statement saying that they think bump stocks ought to be regulated, and I find myself more or less in agreement with that. It definitely falls under the heading of, of what real practical use is this. And maybe it's because of my bias growing up where my shooting background is primarily muzzle-loading guns, where you only get one shot, and you learn to make that one shot count, so you don't need a second shot. And, the idea of just hosing down your target, it may feel good, and there's a lot of adrenaline and everything. But again, I think the people who were putting out these bump stocks, sooner or later it was going to catch up with them. Hello?
Okay. Is it all right if I reply?
Yeah.
Yes. Is it okay if I reply now? I know there's a delay with your phone system.
Okay.
Again, aren't you opening up windows for the government to actually regulate something? Again, I always hear Miller versus D.C. now, and we as citizens are allowed to have the same arms as the military, uniformed military.
The uniformed military doesn't use bump stocks. Let me give you the context of United States versus Miller. The issue was a sawed-off shotgun that Miller was arrested with and charged and convicted with having an illegal weapon. And he fought it all the way to the United States Supreme Court, arguing that the Second Amendment gives him a right to have whatever gun he wants. And the Supreme Court ruled that because it talks about a militia, a citizen's militia, that the Second Amendment guarantees to the American people the same arms held by the uniformed services. And inadvertently, of course, that was seized on to say that, yeah, we can have whatever the police and the Army and the National Guard have, which, again, I don't think they're using bump stocks. And I would like the government to stay out of our lives. But, again, where I grew up, gun owners were responsible. Everybody knew how to use a gun. You got your first rifle on your 12th birthday. You were taught how to use it safely. Everybody in my town had a gun. And we never had mass shootings. In fact, the entire time I lived in that town I was growing up, there was only one gun incident, and that was a suspected attempted suicide.
No, I'm wholeheartedly with you. But again, is not to regulate anything more with the Second Amendment, because that's the closest thing that we can have for the military. Closest to the I know the military doesn't use a bump stock, but there's also triggers out there too for every depression and release. There's 2 rounds that give and that which are legal.
Yeah, I know.
Again,
I've seen those. The Hellfire. But if it comes to open warfare in this country, how hard is it going to be to 3D print a bump stock?
Oh, absolutely. Either way you go. I mean, the bad people already have it. I believe in the good people. There's more of us than them. But to give any more power to the government and to over 2,000 laws that we already have on the books already, it hasn't done anything. And I agree with you. I think you have a fabulous show and all the callers at the angles and everything. But I'm a true 2A. That's it. Second Amendment is for us, the people, and that makes the government nervous. And that's why I want it there. Especially, I'm a weapons enthusiast.
Yep.
But again, any more laws? Absolutely not. Absolutely, I do have to disagree with you. Any more regulation, though, but no disrespect, though, sir. I can
see your point of view, and I might actually give this whole issue a rethink. And like I said, I'm coming in from a bias where a bump stock is not something I would ever personally use or find a need for. But on the other hand, who knows what somebody else wants to do. We'll see what manifests. I'm more concerned about the attack on the Second Amendment itself than regulation of the bump stocks. And maybe the NRA is trying to basically go with a loss leader here, that they'll go along with regulation of the bump stocks in order to derail attempts to repeal the Second Amendment, which I don't think they've really got a chance of being able to do, not through 3/4 of the necessary states.
No, absolutely. And on top of what you were just stating about falling into that, okay, we need more regulation. That's exactly what you were stating, that you just basically kind of just did as far as regulating bump stocks. We're falling into the emotional aspect of things, not the critical
All right,
thinking.
I stand correct. I stand corrected on it, and what we need to do is we need to find out who are the bad people up front, and not punish. Yeah, and like I said, when a Muslim commits an act of terror, we're told by the government and the media, don't judge all Muslims by the actions of this one individual, and yet gun owners don't get the same deal. A gun owner goes on a shooting spree, and they immediately say, all gun owners are bad, all guns are bad, take away all the guns, they're of no use whatsoever. Well, a lot of people get killed every year with baseball bats Should we ban baseball for everybody because of the actions of, one lunatic who likes his lumber? And that shows the goal here is total disarmament of the American people. And I'm fully in agreement that we need to resist that. We need to resist that. Okay?
Roger that. One other quick thing that you had, and this is totally separate. This is with the Robert F. Kennedy, the woman that you had stated that they saw there that was at the shooting there in Vegas.
Yes.
The woman that you were speaking of with the polka dot dress, she turned up dead later on, didn't she? A couple of weeks later in a hotel.
You know something? I'm not aware of that, but it would be interesting to get a confirmation on that. Yeah, she may have allowed herself to be noticed, and they just decided to end a liability there. All right, listen, Craig, we got to take a break here for commercials. Michael. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And apparently a representative of ISIS, really trust us, is for a third time trying to claim that the Las Vegas shooter was shooting up the town on their behalf, that he converted to Islam 6 months ago. Blah. Like I said, crisis exploitation. Something happens, everybody says, how can I use this to push my agenda? In this case, to re-demonize ISIS, as Russia and Syria continue to point out that the U.S. is aiding ISIS. They're helping them out. No, ISIS are the bad people. See, they shot up Las Vegas. Don't you listen to those Russians and Syrians. They're all evil people. We will give them what for lying to you. All right, getting on back to the European Union, Catalonia is not the only headache that Brussels are looking at. There are now 7 independence movements that threaten the unity of the European Union. First of all, the victory of Catalonia in their referendum has reignited calls for an independence referendum in Scotland. Now, they had a vote back in 2014 where independence lost amid very obvious, heavy-handed, massive election fraud. And so it looks like they're probably going to try again, and this time they're really going to be keeping an eye on those vote counters. We live in a world in which the general public is coming to aware that vote fraud is something that is commonplace, and we just have to take precautions against it. Another region that wants to break away is Flanders over in Belgium. And they want to become an independent region. The Basque separatists in Spain have long ago wanted to have their own region break off, just like the way Catalonia is doing. Now, this is not technically in Europe, but it's still a factor, and it's New Caledonia. Now, this is an island out here over that way, the South Pacific Archipelago, and they're holding a referendum sometime next year on independence from France. And then there's the island of Corsica in the Mediterranean. They're getting ready to hold an independence referendum to break free from France. Up near Denmark, the Faroe Islands are having a referendum in April of next year on a new constitution that would give the islands self-determination. Now, they've been autonomous since 1948, but foreign affairs and defense are under the control of Copenhagen. All of this has to have the globalists in a total panic. And finally, in Italy, there are 2 additional regions, Lombardia and Venice. And I can tell you from personal experience, when I was working in Italy on a couple of film projects, it really does feel like 2 countries. Down in Rome, it's loose and it's free and very modern and progressive. And up in Lombardia, ooh, boy, it really does feel like a separate country, separate culture there. And, of course, Venice at one point was its own independent kingdom, trading power in the Mediterranean. So they're talking about splitting off. So it's really out there. All right, let's take a phone call. W in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, back to the Vegas thing real quick. The whole 4th floor theory, I'm trying to understand, though. They said they saw muzzle flashes or whatnot, but I mean, if you're talking about something coming out of a fourth floor window, wouldn't the window have to be shattered?
No, we had we had a caller earlier in the show who basically confirmed that the windows on the fourth floor can be opened because that's how the window washers get access to the upper floors on the towers.
Okay. Well, still, I'm still sort of curious. I'll give it a week or two. It should take a week, but still, I don't know if any of your callers, anybody has heard anything about if there are cameras on the 32nd floor of the hotel. It's just
there are.
Seems like such a basic, simple question.
There are.
So there are cameras on the 32nd floor.
There are. We talked about that during hour number 1 of the show. All right, W, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And the corporate media is still trying to find some way they can demonize Stephen Paddock and convince you that he was this evil, raging, lone wolf, angry white male. Even though the sheriff of Clark County is out there along with Trey Gowdy saying this guy had to have accomplices. So ABC is now pushing the story about how Paddock had all these hundreds of reports of suspicious activity with the hotels. Well, when you actually read the story, what they're talking about are the currency transaction reports. Because when you're in Las Vegas, if you are betting large or you win large, there is a report taken that goes to the Internal Revenue Service. And if you list your occupation as a professional gambler, you can literally deduct your losses from your income tax. And he was a high roller. And so it would be automatic for him to generate, these transaction reports. Now, he did have a couple of genuine suspicious activity reports, but the hotel gets like 11,000 of those every year. It's just something security will do. We don't like the way he's standing. We're not sure what's going on. They're really trying to pull something out of thin air that can convince America this was the guy who did it. Remember how hard they worked to demonize Lee Harvey Oswald or James Earl Ray or any of the other patsies that have been set up and used? Getting on back to independence referendums. Apparently Brazil may be the next hotspot for independence referendums. And apparently inspired by the separatist vote in Catalonia, secessionists in 3 wealthy southern Brazilian states are redoubling their effort to break away from the crisis-battered nation. It's what we should do here in Hawaii. The mainland is in terrible trouble. Militarily, economically, infrastructure-wise. We have the Hawaii lifeboat here, ready to just set sail. We'll actually just sit where we are. But apparently in Brazil, residents of Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Catarina, and Paraná states are going to vote on an informal plebiscite on October 7th as to whether they want independence. Now, this one is informal. But if they get the vote for independence, their next step will be a binding referendum on their respective governments. So there is all of a sudden a huge movement away from this idea of large empires and globalism, because people are seeing that what they're trying to build in Europe is a return to the age of serfdom. And they're trying to bring back serfdom and, huge royal assemblages of very wealthy people just owning everything. And everyone's starting to push back because so far it just doesn't work. The larger a nation gets, the more abusive a government becomes. People want to move away from that. There's a paradigm shift in the human population right now. They want to feel that they're part of a nation, not part of a planetary society. They want to live in a small nation where the government's going to mind its own business. I mean, if everybody were living in peace, think how much prosperity there would be. The reason the United States is not experiencing prosperity is the vast sums of money taken to spend on war. You heard earlier in the show these statements from the Pentagon. We're going to stay in Afghanistan forever if we have to. If that means leaving every American taxpayer naked and starving in the streets of the land, so be it. It's a really sick attitude if you think about it. An even sicker attitude apparently is being shown by a professor at Loyola Marymount University who's out there saying violent protests are productive. Violent protests are good. And basically argued last week, violent protests are a productive means of advancing progressive causes. So what this professor is actually saying is, if you cannot get the voters to vote for your progressive agenda, you just go beat the crap out of them until they learn how to love you. All right, let's talk about computers here. Apple has released another version of iOS 11 for the iPhone, 11.0.2, trying to deal with very bad calls and fix some of the email glitches, and apparently mostly aimed at the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus last month. I still cannot clear the email badge on my email. It says I have 74 mails. The mailboxes are empty, and I can't find a single way to clear it. All of the older methods that would work don't work under iOS 11. It feels very much that this idea of a new operating system, it's change for the sake of change. Change so that we can say it's new and improved. Well, maybe not improved, but it's new. It'll be interesting. If it's not broken, don't fix it. So they're out there with a new release here, and supposedly the firmware update removes the crackling sound that the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus owners have been suffering on voice calls. I mean, the iPhone is first and foremost a phone. How do you mess that up? Why do you need to change the software handling the phone calls if it's been working from the iPhone 1 through the iPhone 7? Now, many times I've said that technology in this country has become decadent, that there are things that are computerized that really don't need to be. And apparently, according to an article over at RINF.com, somebody has discovered that smart sex toys are vulnerable to hackers. And apparently this is affecting smart sex toys made here in the U.S. that would allow hackers to take control of the devices from out on the street. I don't know why, unless they've already wired the room with a camera, but it's like, I don't know, why would you even bother? But it's an issue. Why do you need a computer chip inside one of those things? Now, the first blizzard of the season broke the October snow record in Havre, Montana. They had more than 30 inches reported. Widespread power outages and down trees in parts of Montana, treacherous travel conditions observed in other portions of the northern and central Rockies. Gosh darn that human-caused global warming. Well, not content with plastic bags and our ethanol gasoline, apparently the warmistas have finally decided it's time to go after the cows. We have to go after the cows because, after all, cow farts are methane. Methane is a far more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. Now, it does degrade quickly in the atmosphere, but apparently the global warming people are out there saying, we have to reduce the number of cows, which I'm okay with. I'm eating them as fast as I can. But they're using this to push a meatless agenda on us all. And at our age, Claire and I, to be very honest, joking aside, we're tending toward more vegetarian. But you have to have some meat. If you are living 100% vegetarian and you don't know what you're doing, you can cause yourself a lot of harm. So I don't think the steaks and hamburgers are going away anytime soon, although certainly with the hamburgers, you have to make sure that what's in the hamburger is in fact 100% cow. Because we're dealing with this ugly reality that because of the Fukushima meltdown, the Deepwater Horizon disaster in the Gulf of Mexico, GMO disasters all over the planet, There really isn't enough safe, healthy food for the entire human race, and that's why governments around the world, including the U.S., are sort of giving a nudge, nudge, wink, wink to food companies to use more fillers, more soy protein, more this or that, to bulk up their product. But it may not be nutritionally what you should be having. We're keeping an eye on Tropical Storm Nate. It used to be called this Depression 16. It's now formed into a tropical storm. They've given it the name Nate, and unfortunately, it is aimed right now, New Orleans and Mississippi. And it's going to basically travel across all of those offshore oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. And for those of you who believe in a God or gods that command all things to happen, then he, she, or they are obviously very angry with the United States of America over all of the times they've broken thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's property, thou shalt not bear false witness, which are all very good ideas. But you don't see these kind of disasters hitting the nations we're told are evil, like Syria, over and over and over and over and over and over again. Does give you pause to think, for those of you, as I said, believe there's a God or gods up there that controls the universe. Me, I just think it's bad luck. And it really is bad luck. And I feel bad for those people in New Orleans. They still have not recovered fully from Katrina. And speaking of down there in Florida, following the hurricanes that came on through there, they set out mosquito traps, trying to get the mosquitoes. One mosquito trap, just one, caught 26,000 mosquitoes in just 16 hours. And researchers are saying there are going to be record levels of these insects following Hurricane Irma. It's almost turning into a disaster of biblical proportions. The great storm came, then the blood-sucking mosquitoes came. And it's nasty. Now, the Trump administration has officially turned NASA back toward the moon. We were talking the other day about how even though the Russian and U.S. governments are sneering at each other, Russian and U.S. space scientists are making plans for a joint space station out by the orbit of the moon. It's going to be considered a gateway to missions out to the rest of the solar system. But Trump is now talking about going back to the moon. That'll be exciting. And for those who've been observing space policy, it's not really a surprise, because new space companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Bigelow Aerospace have already started to introduce plans that involved lunar exploration. Then Vice President Mike Pence picked Scott Pace to serve as executive director of the National Space Council, and he's a moon first guy. And finally, the Trump administration nominated Jim Bridenstine, an Oklahoma representative who sees the moon as the critical next step in human evolution, to serve as NASA administrator. And he's absolutely right. Humankind will never be immortal until we can get off this planet and someplace safe, before one of our political leaders does something really nuclear on us all. So it's now official. We saw it coming, but it's now official. And I'm still sad I didn't get appointed NASA administrator, because I was looking forward to ordering those ground crews to dress up like apes every time an astronaut came back to Earth. But I guess, shuckies, I'll just have to learn to live with that disappointment. Apparently, after some 6 years since the Fukushima earthquake and tsunami, scientists have discovered a new and unanticipated source of radioactive waste left behind by the Fukushima disaster. And apparently, radioactive material from the power plant has been found in sands and brackish water as far as 60 miles away. Was probably carried there in flood runoff, and it's being released slowly back into the ocean. It's one of the reasons why Claire and I have given up sushi. Now, here's an interesting little article. This is out of Natural Blaze, talking about how the free press is not free to tell the facts about vaccines. Well, our so-called free press isn't free to tell us the facts about anything. Vaccines, GMO, Las Vegas, they're getting their marching order. That's why we call them prostitutes and correspondents. But basically, they're talking about how the U.S. Congress gave the pharmaceutical and vaccine manufacturers a get-out-of-jail-free card, indemnifying them of all legal and financial product liabilities, and vaccines have proliferated to the point of extreme infringements and health harms upon humans, including the right to self-determination. And that is very much under attack. Apparently over in Detroit, a mother was sentenced to 1 week in jail when she appeared in court for failing to comply with the court's order to get her son vaccinated. Now, I'm one of those people who think that one of the inalienable rights of all mankind, womankind, gaykind, whichever thing you want to use here, is we get to choose what goes in our body or does not. That is fundamental. It may have been considered so obvious that the Founding Fathers didn't feel they needed to enumerate it in the Constitution. But we should have that right. If that right is taken away from us, we are being treated like farm animals. Because farmers, ranchers, they make all these decisions for the cattle. We'll stick a needle in, shoot this stuff in them, take another needle, do that. And that's how we're being treated. And there's grounds to be concerned about what's going on, because apparently over in the British Medical Journal, they did a study of all 48 cancer drugs approved between 2009 and 2013, and they discovered 57% provided no benefit to the patients. It didn't increase survival or well-being, and the British Medical Journal said some of these things were clinically meaningless. But they make money. They make money. And that's really what we're all about here. We're making money here. Money, 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 money. And we will let the insurance companies and Medicare and everything deal with that. But it's a fraud. It is just an absolute, absolute fraud. Okay, we're coming up here on another commercial break. We'll be following it up with the last segment of our show today. So we'll be back after these few words, and please stay tuned. We'll get this show wrapped up. Be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to take one more phone call before the end of the program. Miles in Maine. Aloha, Miles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Michael. Thanks. I just had a couple points on this shooting. At the range this guy was shooting from 400 yards, even shooting a AR-15, he's going to lose 50% of his velocity at that range. So that lowers his range dramatically. Also, he's going to lose trajectory of about 15 inches at that range. Mm-hmm. And there's no way someone's going to use one of these bump fire stocks and be shaking and rattling and rolling. I mean, you'd be good to do it, to hit people if you were just stationary, moving. If you had it in a gun rest, you'd be doing good.
Well, he wasn't aiming. He wasn't aiming at specific people. He just needed to fire into the crowd. It was very tightly packed. Apparently, a lot of the exits were blocked. People couldn't get out, and he could just—it's like shooting fish in a barrel, to use the analogy there. Okay, also, these ARs. These ARs
taking that cartridge to its maximum capability, and also to reload magazines and keep firing them to get 500 rounds out there in a 30-round magazine. It just doesn't make sense.
No, I agree it doesn't make sense, but not to doubt your concerns here, because I share them. I don't think this Paddock acted alone or even acted at all. But those were very modified AR-15s, and you can modify them to take heavier cartridges. You are correct. The stock .223 that is sold to civilians in the gun stores is going to lose a lot of its energy by the time it gets downrange 400 yards. But military-grade .223 has double the range. So that would be another mitigating factor. But again, if you're modifying your AR, you can modify it to take a heavier round. The kits are out there to do that.
I'm very skeptical of all this, all these things and these figures they're throwing out, and now it's bump stocks, and what's it going to be tomorrow? And it's just they're formulating the story as they go, and none of it just makes any real sense,
Actually, right now they're making it up as they go along. They're trying to find some way that they can successfully demonize this guy in the minds of the American public, so that we stop questioning whether or not he really did it.
Yeah, exactly. And right away the suppressor issue come out, and has no merit whatsoever.
Well, not in this case. There were no suppressors being used, but Hillary just got on out there and said if he'd had a silencer, there would have been more deaths, and Paul Ryan knuckled under and pulled the suppressor deregulation off the table. But I think this is the last desperate gasp of the gun grabbers, and I'm very concerned that there are going to be more of these mass shootings, and they're just going to keep on going until the American people surrender their Second Amendment.
Yep, it's just early campaign rhetoric, Michael. But thank you very much, and keep up the great job.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go and close the phone lines here. We've been talking about all the activity along the Ring of Fire. Apparently, the Fuego volcano in South Guatemala just exploded in one of the largest recorded eruptions in the volcano's history. And with all this activity going on, people are getting very nervous about the earthquake swarm. 2,500 tremors at Yellowstone supervolcano since June, one of the longest on records. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller's program. He's got a lot of great information to share with you. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.